Re-
And make sure you hit record. Because you should start the virtual camera, then after you have to hit start recording.
Hello?
Can you see me and hear me okay?
Yes, 1 second. Mhm. Yes, I can see you perfect.
Okay.
How you doing, Joshe?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm going to turn up my volume a little bit here. Whoops.
Okay. All right. Okay, perfect. Perfect. So how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you guys? I don't see you.
You can't see me.
No, I only see Deshay.
You
Can
see,
you?
you don't
I
see
see
me?
you. Yeah, but I don't see. I only see you. I don't see him.
Okay, I think your camera's still off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 second. Cousin, go
Okay.
back to the app and click start.
Mm,
Oh, I got you.
got me. Okay.
Very good. Thanks for having me on your podcast, you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the technical difficulty. So welcome to the Uncultured Truth Podcast. All right. I'm the more voicer. This is my co-host Jerome Rogers. And Jerome Beats Go Hard. So tell me a little about yourself.
Where would you like me to start? I can talk personally and professionally. Does it matter?
No, it don't matter at all. Be yourself.
Okay. I am a 68-year-old old guy. I live in Santa Barbara, California. I've lived here since 1976, which it looks like from what I can see that I've lived here longer than you guys have been alive.
Yes. Yes.
um, I have the same wife I've had for the last 43 years, which is very cool. I got a couple children that are in their 30s. Okay. Suffered a lot of trauma as a kid, which helped me sort of determine my career as a clinical psychologist. I work as a psychologist here in Santa Barbara. I've been practicing for about close to 35 years. I specialize in trauma. I help people overcome unthinkable things that happen to them in their childhood. And I also do a fair bit of relationship counseling, that sort of thing. But my primary focus is working with people that have lots of trauma in their background. I also do a podcast called Fear Me Out. I've put out almost 100 episodes in my podcast, which has been really fun. And I also enjoy being on other people's podcasts to sort of share my personal and professional experiences, depending on what your audience is kind of looking for.
Yeah. What about you, Joshe?
Um, so I'm 25. I'm originally from Kansas City. I live in Dallas, Texas. So I've been here for about 3 years. I recently graduated back in June with my bachelor's degree in media communications. So I'm looking to start my own podcast soon. I like to travel. I'm a dog lover. I don't have any kids, but like that's my baby. So it always used to really be my dream to move to New York and like start my career there. And I hope to do that one day. So that's just a little bit about me.
That's good. I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you.
I'm the more voicer. I'm a chef as profession. I started a podcast to get my opinions out there. 'Cause I got tired of hearing other people's opinions. So this is why I started the podcast. What about you?
Yeah. My name is Jerome. I'm a computer technician. That's my daily life. I basically wanted to start this podcast also because I feel like we're living in a world today where they want everybody to have the same opinions, and it just doesn't work like that. I feel like they are trying to um take our opinions away from us, basically. And it's weird, but
Okay. Let's get started. Dana, can you share the most pivotal moment in your career that led you to specialize in helping people heal from PTSD?
Well, I was born in Canada in 1955. There were still dinosaurs walking around, I'm sure, back then. And my father and mother were born in abject poverty and lived a very, very difficult life in Canada. They were Jewish and experienced a ton of anti-Semitism when they were growing up, which was not easy for them. And my dad had to quit school as a 14-year-old to support his family. So he started his life actually as a criminal, a white-collar criminal. And we had to leave Canada when I was 5 because he was going to go to jail. Before that happened, I went into the hospital when I was about 4.5 to have surgery for a hernia that I was born with. And the night before the surgery, an orderly came into my room and he sexually abused me and told me that if I told anybody that he would kill me. So the next day when they were wheeling me into the surgery room, I thought that when they were putting me under anesthesia that they were killing me, actually. So I went under anesthesia screaming, I won't tell, I won't tell. And I blocked out that memory of being sexually abused all the way until I was in my 30s. I suffered a lot of trauma after that. My family left Canada, went to Europe for a short while, and then we ended up in Brazil. And I lived in Brazil for about a year, but we had to leave there because there was a political uprising while we were there. And I remember as a 5-year-old looking out the window and watching soldiers actually killing some of the people in the street, which was also, again, incredibly traumatic for me as a kid.
Yes.
And then we ended up in California, which was actually pretty wonderful, that part. But the first 6 months I lived here, I was crossing the street to go to school to play in the playground. And I actually got hit by a pickup truck and flew up in the air and landed on my butt. So I've had all kinds of really awful sort of, I lived in the emergency room as a kid, basically, because I was pretty wild. Got involved in drugs when I was in junior high, and I was high every day until I graduated high school. I lived in Los Angeles, and this was during the late 60s when drugs began pouring in, into the world in a way where we didn't really understand what was happening, but they sure were readily available. So I started in therapy when I was about 18 years old. And luckily, my parents were relatively liberal-minded, and so they knew I was miserable based on a lot of stuff that happened and didn't happen for me. When I moved to Santa Barbara in 1976, I found a therapist that actually saved my life and encouraged me to become a psychologist. So he became my mentor, and I've been practicing in Santa Barbara ever since.
Okay. So at what age did you start it professionally?
I was about 30, maybe 35, 34. I was in school for a long time.
Yeah, I was about to say that's like
10 years. That's
yeah, it's basically like you had a career change, like
midlife.
Yeah, midlife.
Well, I started working in a mental hospital while I was in school, so I had some pretty interesting experiences working on a psych ward for about 7 years while I was getting my education. And so that helped me sort of know the difference between all of us and people that are not so fortunate in terms of their mental health.
Yo, Shay, you got any questions for Dana?
I'm sorry?
Oh.
You got any questions?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So, what's one thing you can say? I know you said you went through a lot of trauma when you were younger. What's one thing or one event in your life like that you still carry with you to help others in their lives when you do psychology?
Boy, that's a good question. You know, I think that when you go through a lot of trauma, and I went through a lot of emotional neglect, and my parents were pretty messed up people as a result of the poverty and all that stuff that they went through. It gave me a perspective that I don't think that the average middle class kind of white guy would go through. I didn't have any friends whose father was a white collar criminal. And so I watched my dad, you know, living kind of a shady life in a lot of ways, even though he was able to appear to be just a regular middle class guy. And all of the stuff that happened to really help me understand and have compassion for people that had really terrible things happen to them. You would be shocked at the stories that I hear on a regular basis. I'm still in practice. But for some reason, I think I was just kind of born to help people who have a lot of trauma in their background.
How do you approach the challenges of destigmatization, mental health issues on your podcast and in your private practice?
Well, I'm really very fortunate because I'm a really busy person. I have a waiting list of people that are waiting to come in and see me, which is quite a luxury. The cool thing about where I live is that well, it's kind of a mixed blessing. It's a very wealthy community, so people can afford therapy, and they don't even blink about, you know, what it costs and all of that. And most of the people that come and see me are very highly functioning people that have, you know, struggles in relationships and also overcoming post-traumatic stress. But I guess my approach is not to pathologize people, not to look at them as having something wrong with them because of the symptoms that they have, because I think it's a big mistake for therapists to, when someone comes to see me and feels bad about themselves, to agree with them that there's something wrong with them, because there's very little wrong with most people. I think it's what happens to most people and what doesn't happen for them that really determines the way a person feels about themselves and functions in the world. So I have a bit of a different approach in that I don't pathologize people. I don't diagnose people and then, you know, try to come up with a treatment plan. I'd rather look at their symptoms as a form of communication about what's going on a deeper level.
Okay. If you, example, what is the average how long would you say a person would, like, the average, your clients, what is the average span that they stay with you? Do you have people that stay with you like
long term,
or do you know?
You know, I see people sometimes just for a couple visits, and I also have clients that I've known for 25 years or so. Not that those people have been in therapy the whole time, but some people come and go. I've been doing this long enough now that some of the children that I met in junior high, as an example, when I first started, are now parents and have their own children, which is pretty cool. So I do see people for long periods of time, depending on the nature of their trauma, how bad, you know, it is that they suffered. And also, it depends on how much interest you have in healing. You know, some people are just looking to kind of do the best they can to get over stuff as quickly as possible. And other people really want to dive in in a deep way and really resolve their trauma, which I think takes a lot of courage because you have to face a lot of pain and fear and especially shame in that process. So it's very variable. I see as many men as I do women, which is an unusual thing for therapists. Most of the time, therapists see more women than men, but I'm lucky in that regard because one of the reasons I started my podcast was to show the world that old guys like me can actually be vulnerable and talk about how they feel.
Definitely. Men have feelings too, yes. Joshe, you got any questions?
So I know you had kids of your own. So what do those conversations look like when you're telling your kids, your story? If you sit down and tell them, this is what dad had to go through trauma-wise, and like how do you maneuver, since you're a psychologist, I imagine that they have conversations with you about what they go through. So how do those conversations look like for you with your own personal children?
Well, that's a really good question, Joshe, because my wife was when she was employed, was a hospice nurse. Mm-hmm. So she spent her career helping people die, and I spend my career helping people live. So the questions around the dinner table were quite interesting for my kids because, everywhere they drive with their mom says, "Oh, I helped somebody die in that house, and I helped somebody die in that house." Not to make light of it, but it's kind of a weird reference point to drive around your community and talk about how you help somebody die in their particular location. And I would talk to my kids about all the things that I would encounter in the course of my professional life, because I feel like my kids were very privileged. They grew up in a really lovely, Santa Barbara is a really lovely place. We have a really nice house that looks out over the ocean, and so I've been quite fortunate in that my parents encouraged me to, become a professional person despite their lack of education and their experience in poverty. So I'm pretty open with my kids. They know pretty much everything that's happened to me. I didn't reveal the details until they're old enough to be able to handle the details of what took place, because I didn't want them to be scared by what happened to me. I've also had some pretty traumatic experiences as an adult. I've almost died about 4 times, and that's been really traumatic for my children.
Oh man, that's crazy.
How that happened? Car accidents or something like that?
Well, when I was 45,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, I said, remember you got hit by the truck. So I was.
Yeah, but that was when I was 7.
Oh my
and
God.
That was not life threatening. But when I was 45 years old, I went to go surfing with my friends. I was a very active surfer for a long time. And I got to the beach and my friends weren't there yet. And I got a very strong feeling not to go in the water by myself, which is a really hard thing to do. I don't know how much exposure you guys have to surfers where you live, but when the waves are good, you don't want to slow down in any way.
Yeah.
I was smart enough to listen. I paddled out in the water and had a major heart attack within 10 minutes of paddling out on the ocean.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Is it strange?
So,
any of paddling?
I was able to make it to the shore, and then I collapsed, and my friends saw that I was not doing very well. And luckily, there was a fireman that lived on the beach that I collapsed on, and so he was able to get the ambulance there pretty quickly and get me to the hospital. But if I went out by myself, I would have drowned, died in the water.
Yeah.
So that was my first adventure with death. Unfortunately, I've had a couple other major health problems. I've had quintuple bypass surgery because my heart got damaged by the heart attack.
Oh.
And unfortunately, I've had a couple strokes, but I'm actually a pretty healthy person. I try really hard to keep myself going despite all the stuff I've had to deal with. My spine is completely encased in titanium, screws and rods all the way from my neck to the base of my spine from injuries and genetic stuff that happened to me. So my life medically has not been very easy. But I'm not ready to go yet. So I'm fighting as hard as I can.
You look healthy and you look like you had a feeling like.
Well, I'm really lucky. I live by the beach. I get to walk every day by the ocean and watch the sunrise. And unfortunately, I can't surf anymore. But if that's the worst thing I have to deal with, that's not so bad.
Yeah, definitely.
You got something to say? You want to say, Joshe?
Oh no.
Okay. My next question is: Are there specific therapeutic techniques or approaches that you find particularly effective in treatment?
I love that question because one of the main things I do with people that are suffering from post-traumatic stress is hypnosis. I do a lot of hypnotherapy with people because when you're experiencing trauma, you go into an altered state in order to cope. And you don't really feel what's happening to you because you're in sort of a fight or flight situation. And so your body kind of closes down in order for you to survive. And so what that creates is a whole lot of really intense emotion that never gets addressed. And so that's what causes post-traumatic stress is that in the heat of the trauma, you don't experience what what's happening to you, and then all those feelings get buried inside your body, and they start to create symptoms of all kinds because the trauma doesn't go away just because the situation is over. So hypnosis is a direct pathway into trauma. It's a way of kind of chemically and electrically recreating what you're going through when you're experiencing trauma, but it gives you the opportunity to feel what it was that was happening to you and release that pain in a fairly efficient way. So it makes therapy go more quickly and more efficiently to do hypnosis, which is probably the main way that I help people deal with trauma.
What are some of the signs that a person would that you would see in a person that would let you know that they are experiencing trauma?
Well, you would be surprised how many people suffer from depression and anxiety as a result of being traumatized. Depending on the type of trauma that we're talking about, like if it's sexual trauma, if a person gets sexually abused as a kid, they lose any kind of neutrality when it comes to their sexual life. They either become hyper or hyposexual. A lot of people become really promiscuous or they become shut down. It kind of takes away the neutrality. So when people describe a life, as a teenager or a young adult when they were, having tons of sexual partners and all that sort of thing, or they describe the fact that they don't really experience any kind of sexual pleasure because their body is really shut down. Those are signs that you're dealing with something that's bigger than you are. When it comes to physical abuse, sometimes just looking at the way a person carries their body can be really a strong indication that they're suffering from trauma. People that hold their breath without realizing that they don't breathe easily. When you're holding your breath, it's a way of keeping your body still. And that's a way that your body is telling you that you need to deal with trauma. So it shows up in a bunch of different ways. Because I've been doing this for so long, it's easy for me when I look at someone to get a feeling about what they're carrying inside their body, because we give clues in all kinds of different ways that people don't really pay attention to. But because of what I do, I pay attention to that sort of thing.
Shay, you got any questions?
So you mentioned something that's really important. I know you say you were sexually abused. So a lot of men don't really talk about that. It's very uncommon for, guys, even though we know it happens, to get sexually abused. So I know you see a variety of clients. What does that look like for you? If you do share those experiences with your clients, just telling them about the sexual abuse that you encountered when you were younger.
Well, I'm not shy about talking about what happened to me because I think that the biggest mistake we can make is keeping secrets. And statistically, about 6 out of 10 men have some type of sexual experience as a child that's not okay. And I think that's underreported because I think it happens way more to men than we realize. About 7 out of 10 women have sexual experiences that are certainly not okay. And that ranges all the way from, something that's not, there's no such thing as minor sexual abuse, but there is a difference between, somebody fondling you and somebody raping you. But I'm extremely open about this. I talk a lot about it on my podcast. I am not hesitant to share what happened to me with anybody who would like to know, because what we don't talk about, I think, takes us down in a really in a bad way. So I'm maybe a little different than most people in that. I know it's an uncomfortable subject to talk about, but I just think it causes so much harm to so many people.
Okay, you just mentioned about your podcast. In your episodes, you often share your personal stories and experience. How do you navigate the balance between vulnerability and professionalism in your practice and on air?
Well, I mean, for the longest time, I will say that I didn't reveal much about myself because when you go to therapy school, they tell you that you're supposed to be like an invisible person that doesn't have a life or even a gender. And I think that's kind of stupid because obviously I'm a man, even though, you know, anyway.
To be a robot.
Right. Yeah. But I got to a certain point where I just thought to myself, this is, so stupid. Why do I'm going to tell everybody what's happened to me so that I can normalize that this stuff happens to a lot of people and it happens all the time. And it's epidemic in our society. And it's one of the main reasons why people suffer as much as they do. And so I kind of came to the conclusion that if I'm going to ask other people to talk about their stuff on my podcast, and I've had a lot of guests that have come in and talked about really traumatic, very difficult things that they've had to overcome. If I won't do the same thing, what right do I have to ask them, to be as brutally honest and as vulnerable as I'm asking? So I just sort of feel like it's up to me to show what it looks like and help people have the courage, because the stories can be quite inspiring. The stuff that people have overcome is really remarkable, actually.
I always wanted to ask this question to a psychologist. So there's about 800,000 people that go missing a year. And you've been a doctor for about 30 years. Have you ever met somebody that went missing?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question. I really apologize.
No, it's okay. I always wanted to ask this question. There's about 800,000 people that go missing a year.
Yeah.
And you've been a psychologist for about 30 years. Have you ever
Yes.
have you ever had a client that went missing and was found years later or something?
Boy, when I think about that, I don't think that's ever happened. I've known people that sort of got maybe kidnapped as little kids by a parent during a divorce.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that's quite the same thing that you're.
I think I understand what he's trying to say. You know how people have like schizophrenia, and they will wander off somewhere, and because I feel like in New York City we see it all the time with the homeless people.
Yes.
And, they have families, but they're just going through something in their head where they just wander off on their own, and nobody hears from them again.
That wasn't what I meant. I just meant people go missing in period. A wife, a kid, and later on they get found, and then they gotta go to therapy and talk about.
Yeah, but that's what
get back to society. So schizophrenia is the disease, like being bipolar. I'm not talking about.
Yeah, you guys are kind of talking about two separate things.
Yes.
Okay.
There are lots of homeless people in Santa Barbara that are mentally ill.
Yeah.
And because they're not dangerous, there's nothing to help people like that, because the government, the people that have mental illness don't vote. And so politicians don't care about them because they're not part of their constituency. I know that that's probably a jaded way of looking at it, but if I got nothing to offer a politician, they're not going to do anything to help me. And so I think that kids and homeless people and people with mental illness, they don't have anything to offer financially or voting wise to people that are in the power in our world. And so they just get ignored and really disrespected. It's really sad, really terrible.
Did you see a rise in clients after Corona?
My business got exponentially, I hate to say this, better.
Yeah.
I was already really busy to begin with, but to the point where I would have to clone myself to see everybody that wanted to come and see me, because the idea that something invisible could take us down is very anxiety provoking for most people. If you're a parent and you want to protect your children, you cannot tell them they're going to be okay, because you can't protect them against something that's invisible.
Yes.
So it brought about a lot of really terrible symptoms for people. The emergency rooms got filled with drunk driving people, drivers and people suffering from sexual and domestic abuse. That virus brought out the worst in everybody psychologically.
Yes.
Not everybody, but most people.
Yes.
Because it was so frightening and overwhelming.
Well, I'll move to the next question. Joe Shay, you got any other questions?
What are your long-term goals within the psychology field? Like, what's one thing you do, if you retire, that you can say, like, I want to do this, or I want to make sure my clients feel like this?
Well, first of all, I don't plan on ever retiring because I really like what I do. I mean, I could retire now financially if I wanted to, but I'm having too much fun. I know it may seem weird that it's fun to help people that are, suffering deep trauma, but I feel like that's what I was designed to do. And so I really love that. And I really love doing a podcast. It's really fun to help people that I don't know and that I will never meet. And so what I want to do before I die is help as many people before one day I fall out of my chair.
What are some of the things that you recommend?
I'm sorry?
What are some of the things that you recommend to the people who needs help that watches your podcast?
Well, I'm a psychologist, so I'm very biased. And so what I encourage people to do is get the help they need in order to live the best life that they can. And I have to admit that I'm a very biased person because, why would I not encourage people to get therapy if I feel like it's a pathway toward a better life? So, but I've also done a lot of podcasts where I've interviewed professionals like myself that I respect, so that I can show people what it looks like to find the right person, because I'm sure you guys probably know that half the people that do what I do they're nuts, if I can be sort of honest.
Got about 8 minutes. Got about 8 minutes left. I'm trying to ask you 3 more questions. All right, Joe, you got any other questions before I move on?
I don't.
Okay, so how do you stay up to date on the latest research and achievements in the field of psychology to ensure that your audience receive accurate and relevant information?
Boy, that's a really difficult question. I think I'm going to lose all credibility now because I don't pay attention to much research, or because I think a lot of that stuff is a bunch of crap. Personally,
I agree. I
think that in any profession, people that overly identify with their profession are full of crap, basically. I think that the idea is to have common sense and to treat people with respect and to help people understand that they deserve to be loved despite how they feel about themselves.
Yeah.
I do pay a lot of attention to medicines that are coming on board because, helping people with depression and anxiety sometimes does involve medication. So I try to pay attention to that sort of thing. But as far as the field of psychology, I think it's the same thing that gets reinforced over and over again.
All right. My next question is, could you share a success story from your podcast or private practice where you witnessed a significant transformation in someone recovering?
Well, I will say that the things that happen are pretty remarkable when people face their trauma and are brave enough to really go as deep as they need to. Because, I mean, people sometimes that are really lonely, they feel really badly about themselves. Every child blames themselves for the things that happen to them. And so when I can help somebody start to treat themselves with respect and allow themselves to have the success that they are capable of, I see that actually happen over and over again. I see people falling in love sometimes for the first time in a really healthy way, because people tend to get the same partners over and over again if they don't understand what they're bringing to the table, that sort of thing. So the ways I try to help people is to get them to really pay attention to their intuition and really understand that they have a lot more going for them than they give themselves credit for.
Yeah, I understand.
What advice do you have for an individual who may be hesitant to seek help for their mental health, especially for those with PTSD?
Well, I think the biggest mistake you can make, especially if you have PTSD, is not to treat it, because the symptoms that will come to haunt you are really self-destructive. I see people really struggle with substances, with food, with overwork, with all kinds of compulsive behaviors. I think that it makes you feel really badly about yourself as a person, because when you suffer from, trauma, usually people blame themselves. So I think it's really important. And to understand that even if you don't have much money, you can still get help, because every therapist has to go through training. And when they're going through training, they pretty much work for free.
Yeah.
So I send a lot of people to certain counseling centers in town if they don't have any money, and they can still get quality help if they find the right therapist. So to not let money sort of be an impediment to getting the help that you need.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you incorporate feedback from your audience into shaping the content and direction of Fear Me Out?
Well, I wish I got more feedback. I ask people to email me and send me feedback all the time. And mostly what I hear is, hey, I listened to your podcast. I really liked it. But that's about as far as.
Yeah.
Don't worry. We will give you some feedback. Don't worry.
Yeah. But I will say that earlier this year, I got a note from a woman that I've never met who said that the podcast saved her life.
Wow.
Okay.
And that was pretty dramatic, because she came upon an episode at a moment of really dark fear, and she was actually getting ready to kill herself because she thought she was going to lose her kids.
Yeah.
And I did an episode on parent alienation syndrome, and she just happened to listen to that episode. She just found it on uh, Instagram or somewhere, and she said it completely changed her view about what to do moving forward. So she went to court the next morning, and her attorney actually offered to work for free, because she did not want her husband, to get custody of the kids. And she said it completely changed her life and kept her alive. So I figure if that happens only with one person in the entirety of my podcast, then I've done what I need to do.
All right. Before I conclude, Joshay, you got anything you want to add?
No.
No. Okay. Jerome.
No.
Dana, you want anything else you want to share before you go?
Well, what I will say is thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. We live in different parts of the world, but I think it's very cool that you guys care enough to want to be as, helpful as you are, because we need people to care, and we need people to do whatever they can to try to make the world a better place. Because we're all sort of being encouraged to be, really selfish and self-involved. And I just think that's really tragic. So, and I'm an old guy, so it's up to you guys to change the world at this point. I'm on the downslope. You guys are on the upslope. So please, keep doing what you're doing, because it's really, really important.
Also, it's a pleasure working with you. It's very informational, and I thank you for joining us.
You guys are very kind. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Joshay, you want to say your Instagram or anything before we go?
Yeah, my Instagram is my name, Joshay, J.O.S.H.E.A_ You guys can follow me on there.
Dan, shout out your podcast again. Hear me out.
Yeah, my podcast will be Shay's Tea. I also have an Instagram page that you guys can also follow. It's Shays_T. So you can follow me there as well as Facebook.
Dana, you want to tell them your handles, your Instagram, your podcast, everything before we go?
Well, my website is danasaperstein.com or fearmeoutpodcast.com. And that will take you to all the information that you need to know about me and every episode on my podcast.
Okay. Rome?
Follow me on Instagram. Rome beats so hard. Yeah, that's it. I appreciate you guys for giving us your time.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you very much.
Very amazing.
You're all very kind.
Right. I'm Lamar Royster, Lamar Royster CEO on Instagram. The podcast called Untalk the Truth, and thank you for joining us.
Very good.
All right.
Joshay, I'm gonna send you an email, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.